Welcome to Healing from Emotional Abuse, the award-winning podcast that sheds light on the journey from victim to survivor. I'm your host, Marissa F. Cohen, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this empowering and healing adventure. The Healing from Emotional Abuse podcast isn't just another conversation. It's a sanctuary for those who have endured abuse and are determined to reclaim their lives. Through interviews with inspiring survivors, experts, and advocates, we aim to break the silence surrounding abuse and empower our listeners with the knowledge, support, and resources they need to break free from their past. Our mission is to provide a safe space where survivors can share their stories, find solace in knowing they're not alone, and discover the strength within themselves to heal and thrive. Each episode is filled with powerful narratives, practical strategies, and compassionate guidance to help you overcome the lingering effects of abuse and build a brighter future. It brings me immense joy to announce that the Healing from Emotional Abuse podcast has been honored with the prestigious Purple Ribbon Award for Outstanding Domestic Violence Podcasts by DomesticShelters.org, recognizing our commitment to raising awareness about abuse and offering hope to survivors worldwide. We have hit top 10% globally and top podcast in 25 countries. This accolade is a testament to the incredible guests who have shared their stories and the tremendous support from our devoted listeners. Thank you so much. Whether you're a survivor seeking healing, a friend or family member wanting to understand and support, or an advocate dedicated to creating a safer world, this podcast is for you. Our conversations delve into topics such as emotional, physical, financial, and psychological abuse, recovery techniques, self-care strategies, legal rights, and much, much more. Join us as we embark on this transformative journey together. Subscribe to Healing from Emotional Abuse on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, your story matters, and you have the power to break your silence from the chains of abuse. I'm your host, Marissa F. Cohen, and this is Healing from Emotional Abuse. Let's reclaim our lives and empower one another. Welcome back to the Healing from Emotional Abuse podcast. I'm your host, Marissa.
And I'm your co-host, Sammy Litchard.
Yay! Welcome, Sammy. We're so excited today because we have a really cool interview with Arlene Haeggquist. But before we get into that, we really wanted to talk about something that is really important. I know Sammy has brought up to me workplace dynamics. And so we wanted to share some workplace sexual harassment issues just because it's so common, and Arlene touches on it in her interview, and it happens to 50% of women, and we're both women, and we are each on the other side of the 50%. Oh gosh, so many times from male bosses and female colleagues. I've experienced all kinds of harassment. From women, it's usually more of commentary on my body, or complaining about my clothes, or trying to make me feel intimidated or uncomfortable by overpowering me or getting in my face. When I worked at the military base, I had a female coworker who, this is all my perception of it, but my assumption is that she was jealous of the attention I was getting, but my job was to be friends with everybody. So I just did my job, and she didn't like that the men on base, which made up probably 85 to 90% of my base, really liked me. Right? And not liked me in a sexual or intimate way, but we got along really well. I went to the gym with them. We had lunch together. I played Scrabble at lunch with some of my coworkers. It was fun. We went out to lunch all the time and hung out after and went to happy hour, things like that. And she didn't like that I had these relationships with them. And so she would regularly get in my face, stand up really close to me, and she was taller than me, so she'd look down on me and flex on me. And she would do that often. And then she would taunt me or talk bad about me. And so while that wasn't directly sexual harassment, because she wasn't leveraging my position, she was trying to make me feel intimidated and trying to get me to leave or back down or stay quiet, as opposed to being able to function and do my job properly. Have you ever had a situation like that, Sammy?
I would say I had a similar situation, but not to that level. I would definitely say that. I would say recently it was very minor harassment, but it wasn't even to my face. It was all behind my back, which is even worse, I feel like. I wouldn't say even worse, I apologize. I would say it just didn't feel good. I would say at a position that I was in, I was told that, so when people get to know my personality, I'm a very excited person. It's just who I am, very bubbly. That was a con. Apparently that was a thing that someone did not like, that I was a very bubbly person and tried to make my job a living HELL. And it was very frustrating, but I didn't let it affect me until it started trickling down into staff members, to saying, oh, she's not professional. Oh, she's dressed. I'm a very t-shirt, jeans kind of girl. I'm a comfort dresser. She's not professional enough. She's not doing this. It was all very frustrating because it's things that really value who I am, and they value who I am as a person. And it was frustrating because it's things that, am I supposed to change this? Am I not? I think that's where I want to say it's similar, but not. Am I supposed to become a miserable person at my job and just go in, log in, do the job and leave? Or am I supposed to stay who I am? So I think I wouldn't say the frustration, but the confusion is I didn't know who I was for a few months, and I didn't like that. That really brought me down, and I finally, it took me a long time to work up to the place where I am in my life. It took a lot of friends, a lot of support, a lot of stories, a lot of sharing, and a lot of therapy. And for this place just to start bringing me back down for minor things that didn't even affect what I did in my position, it was hurtful.
And the things that happen at work trickle down into our real lives. So if you think about it, we spend 8 hours, supposedly 8 hours sleeping, 8 hours at work, and 8 hours at home, right? If you break it up into a perfect, that's 33% of your adult life you spend at work. And if that 33% is you getting harassed by bosses or coworkers, shit talked behind your back, made to feel insecure or inferior or in danger, unsafe, like that actually does trickle into our ability to sleep, which impacts our mood, our irritability, our performance at work. It impacts outside of work, our personal relationships, the way we feel about ourselves and others, our feeling of safety and comfort with the people around us. So what happens at work and in your workplace in those dynamics, whether it's coming from a boss and a superior that is making you leverage or leveraging your needs, right? Your basic needs of like shelter and food, which is directly related to working, to like their fulfillment, that's problematic, right? And so if you are getting harassed or bothered or talked about and made to feel unsafe at work, I'm sure that it impacted you and Anton a little bit, right? Your mood, your ability to communicate, your feeling of safety, and you live where you work.
I was just about to add that. I was like, on top of that, when you can't even leave the place that you work, it makes it difficult. Yes, I physically walk about 40 yards from one door to the other, but it's just stepping outside your safety zone, your home. Like as soon as you walk out, it's difficult. And we have animals on campus, so sometimes I may want to go out in some PJs on a Saturday morning to let my dog relieve herself to come back in and fall asleep. It's the judgments and the looks and all of that happens at my workplace that does, like you said, trickle into home. It affects it. Things are great now, by the way. I want to preface that really quick. Like things are phenomenal. All things are great. I'm not even referring to current stuff. It's just stories. But yes.
100%. And I didn't mean to throw you.
No, I was like, I just wanted to make sure.
No, but it makes sense, right? Especially if you live where you work, there's literally no escape. Or if you own your own business like I do, where if I have a bad day or I start beating myself up, and I am my own boss, which really is a nice benefit, but I've had so many prior experiences that were awful that, you know, if I have a bad day or if something doesn't go my way, I don't have that escape. I don't get to leave my workplace at work. At my work building, I have to go into a different room in my house, right? This is my office, and 2 doors that way is my bedroom, and down a staircase is my living room. So I don't really ever leave work. When I'm done with work now, I close the door and I only work in this room to associate, but still it's the same idea. And so when you're miserable, when you have a bad work dynamic, or when you have coworkers or a boss that are making you feel unsafe, when someone's shit talking you like that and trying to attack your professionalism and your personality, it does make you feel unsafe. So a little more on the nose, because Arlene is an attorney who works with survivors of sexual harassment and sexual assault, primarily in the workplace. So she deals with power dynamics all the time. I used to bartend and waitress at Applebee's. If you don't know Applebee's, you're very lucky. No, the food at Applebee's is fine. Like, the company is fine. It's a good place. It's like equivalent to Chili's, right? But I had a boss he was the general manager of our store. I actually had two at the same location, and one left, or one got fired or transferred or something. But one of them, his entire goal, he hated his wife because his wife cheated on him with his brother. So all of a sudden, it was a whole mess. But he hated all women, and he took it out on the women. And his goal was to make at least one female employee cry every shift. That's not a joke. That's not an exaggeration. He would go out of his way to embarrass us in front of tables, to yell at us or demean us or scold us in front of coworkers. He was really, truly awful. And I was young. I was in high school when I worked there. So it wasn't like life or death if I quit, but that was my money source, right? That's how I afforded to travel. That's how I saved money for college. It's how I did all these things. So for me at the time, it felt like I can't leave. This is my life. And so I felt stuck there. And eventually enough of us complained to corporate, and he got transferred, I believe. I don't think he even got fired. I think he got sent to a different store, which doesn't actually solve the problem at all. He just wasn't
another store's problem.
It became another group of women's problems. And so that's a problematic solution. And you see that happen all the time, especially in situations where money and power and influence are involved, right? And but then the next boss honestly was even worse, right? They say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I actually would have preferred the cry guy. His name was Bob. So we had Bob, and then we had Rob. And Rob was horrendous. He wouldn't try and make us cry on shift, but there were certain girls that he would favorite. I was one of the favorites, and it's because I was young and I was attractive and I had a very bubbly, big personality. So he would very often call me into his office, whether it was during a shift or after a shift, but he would call me in his office, close the door, and he would get really close and talk to me. And it wasn't always sexual or provocative or anything like that, but he would stand like really close to my face. And so as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, I was there for 3 years. As a young woman, I didn't know how to say, get the fuck out of my face.
Uncomfortable.
It was so uncomfortable, but he had this authority, right? If I told him to get out of my face, if I said back up, anything, he could have fired me, and he could make it look like I was the bad employee, right? So he would corner me and talk really close to me, and it didn't matter what we were talking about. It was uncomfortable, but it escalated. Sexual assault starts with sexual harassment. It's pushing boundaries. It's figuring out what he can get away with, what I will stand up to, how far he could push me before I spook. And I didn't know how to handle that. We didn't talk about this stuff back then. So it started with really close talking. And then it became, he was talking to other male coworkers. And like I said, I worked there for 3 years. So I had a lot of really good friends that were my coworkers. He would talk to them and say, Marissa's so hot. If I was younger, I would totally insert some disgusting, vile sexual act. And of course, those guys also didn't know how to handle it, because again, all young. So they came and told me. So now I'm stuck in an office with a close talker who I know is sexually attracted to me or thinking of me in a way that I didn't feel was right. And so it just got worse and worse. Eventually it got to him touching me, touching my arm, or he would have me sit down in a chair and he would touch my knee. But he was talking about something unreal. He wouldn't say, "You're so hot." He would touch my knee and say, "You did a really good job today." And so I'm uncomfortable, but I didn't know how to handle it. So it just escalated and escalated until I just quit. I found a new serving bartending job and I left. I just wasn't interested anymore because I was scared all the time, and always office, always alone, always door closed. And it just started to, it always felt uncomfortable, but it just started to like really eat at me. And I didn't know that I had options. I didn't know I knew it didn't feel right, but I didn't know that was a power dynamic issue. I didn't know that was considered sexual harassment. I feel like the next step would have been, if you want this promotion or if you want this, then you have to do this for me. And I didn't want any part of that. So I found a new job with bosses that were way more respectful and set very clear boundaries, and realized that bartending jobs are a dime a dozen. I could quit one and find another one in an hour. All that's a learning curve. But as an older adult now, being in a situation like that, if I wasn't self-employed, that's a whole different ballpark, because I have a mortgage, I have a husband, I have dogs, I have responsibilities, and I would rely on that paycheck, right? And so I can't begin to imagine like the fear of that. And so I think it's really important that we listen to Arlene and we take all the advice that she gives and really run with it, and know that we have rights, and know that there should be safety at work, and that there are people and advocates and teams of people on our side to keep us protected. Ready to listen?
Yes.
All right, let's jump in. Recording. Welcome back to the Healing from Emotional Abuse podcast. I'm your host, Marissa Cohen, and today we have an amazing guest. I'm really excited to chat with her, Arlene Haeggquist. Welcome on. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you here. So would you mind just telling us about yourself and introducing yourself?
Sure. I am a lawyer out here in San Diego, and I've had my firm for the past 15 years, and I represent primarily women who have been sexually harassed or assaulted or discriminated against in the workplace.
Oh, that's amazing. We definitely need more lawyers that focus on that.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you? Like, how often do people come to you about these kinds of scenarios?
I wish I could say it wasn't often, but it's still really a prevalent problem in our community of women being harassed and discriminated against in the workplace. You think there's more equity, you think there's more equality in the workplace, but unfortunately they keep getting abused. And so they come to me daily. I meet with women daily and represent women daily against their abusers in court.
Is this a newer area of law? I understand that this has been happening forever, but people haven't really talked about it until very recently, and especially tried to fight it because we were always brushed off by law enforcement. So how new is this field?
So the field of law isn't new at all. We've had the laws protecting us in place for a long time. I would say women coming forward more and more is getting to be more prevalent, right? Yes. Women who have been abused think they can't stand up for themselves. They're ashamed of it. They're scared of it. They don't think anybody will believe them. And I see that every day. But more and more women that stand up, the more and more women feel like they can also come forward and stand up for themselves.
That's awesome. So do you mind just taking us through the process of what the legal side of this looks like? We all, for the most part, most women know what the feeling side of it, like the actual harassment side of it looks like, but what does the legal side of that look like?
Yeah, I would say the first step is for you to decide that you want to take a stand, that you've been abused, you've been victimized, and you want to stand up for yourself. And so that's step one. And then step two is finding a lawyer that you feel can really be your advocate and can help you stand up for yourself and is going to fight on your behalf and be there for you. And once you find the lawyer that you're going to have do that, you're really working with the lawyer. Like, our job is to help you stand up for yourself, but you have to take the first step. And it's really working with the lawyer to provide the facts and details and getting everything you have in your possession to help us stand up for you. And the process is we put together a story as to what happened to you, right? This is the harm that happened and the laws that were violated. And so that's what a lawyer does. They put the story together and identify the laws. People think, what I've learned in doing this for over 20 years and having my firm for the past 15, people with money and influence and power, they for some reason think the laws don't apply to them, that they can get away with doing these things to women. And we're here to tell you they can't. Power is not an excuse. Money is not an excuse. The laws apply to everyone equally. And when you have a lawyer on your side, that's what we do. We stand up against them and say, no, I don't care how much money and power you have. You're not going to do this to our clients. That's what it looks like. It's definitely, it can be scary, and it causes like you're scared as to what's going to happen because it's unknown to the person coming in to our office. But I think we do a really good job because not only do we have a lawyer on staff, we have a whole team. We have a team of 15 people that work on your case and are with you every step of the way, including a survivor advocate that we have here in the office, because we understand litigation can be emotional, and she's here to help you during that process because she's not a lawyer. And she's been a plaintiff in a lawsuit, so she understands it. And she has credentials and training to be trauma informed. And she helps us be trauma informed, so we do a better job talking to our clients.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is the, what's the best thing a survivor can provide to help you win their case?
I would say documentation. So even if you have, sometimes women come in and you're like, I don't have any proof that he did this to me. And the proof sometimes is the fact that you journaled to yourself, or you sent yourself an email, or you texted your friend and was like, oh my God, this just happened to me. That's all evidence. So that is all helpful. So documenting things that happen to you when they happen will really help in any sort of litigation case.
That's awesome. So even if it's just a note to yourself or like a time, date, and a small blurb about it, all of that is positive. It helps you.
Exactly. Because unfortunately, the first thing that people do is they deny it. They deny that event ever happened. And so the way you combat that is, well, no, it did happen. And here in real time, I was sharing this information either to myself, or in real time, I was sharing the information to somebody else.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that's an easy way to prepare yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Even so, those are situations where, like in the workplace, for example, if the boss is harassing you, women get scared. They don't want to lose their job, right? Because that's what's putting food on the table. And so they're really scared to stand up to the boss that's harassing them. And so they might not want to report it right away. They might not want to tell human resources. They might not want to tell another senior level person. And so one thing that we recommend is at least document it to yourself. If you're not ready to report it up the chain, then at least, take notes on what's going on so you have that for yourself if you decide to report it or pursue it later.
That's awesome. So I apologize. I'm getting over a cold. So.
Oh, good. Okay. After all that travel. So
I know.
And all the planes. Yeah.
I was bound to get a cold somewhere along the way. But that's awesome that even just that documentation, or even text messages to friends or partners or family, are solid and helpful in court. That's great to know.
Yes.
So how did you get into this field?
When I was growing up, my father was terrifying. I got abused as a kid, emotionally, physically, verbally, and even sexually. And that was a really hard way to grow up. And I always wanted somebody to save me. I always wanted somebody to protect me. I wanted that to be my mom, but my mom stayed silent. She didn't say anything, even though she knew what was going on. So I didn't have an advocate or somebody supporting me to say this was wrong. And that was just the life I grew up with. It became almost like it was normal, like life was supposed to be that way. And I suffered a lot of consequences. I was really depressed, so depressed that I tried to commit suicide twice when I was young. At one point, I was only like 10 or 11 years old, and second time when I was 16. And so knowing how that feels, I got away from that. I was lucky enough to go to college. And through college, I was able to go to law school and start a law firm. And so now I'm that advocate. I am the person that I wanted my mom to be for me. I am that person who fights and helps you say, no, that conduct is not okay. And I got into this field because it's so prevalent. When you're going through it, you think you're all alone. You think you're the only person this is happening to, and you can't share that story with anybody else. And sadly, it's such a prevalent problem. Like 50% of women experience sexual violence. That's a very large number. And I think it's more than that because there's probably a lot of underreporting and people not talking about it. And so when you think about how high those numbers are, and that these women, even though it's happening to so many of them around them, we're not talking about it. I think it's important for me to do the work that I do. And it gives me great purpose to be able to stand up for them.
It must be a very rewarding feeling, especially like that feeling of vindication because you are being the person that you needed when you were a kid. That's exactly. An incredible journey.
Exactly. Yeah, it has been a journey. It wasn't right away. It wasn't right away. I was definitely lashing out in unfocused ways. And now I'm able to take all that anger that I feel when somebody's experiencing this kind of abuse and focus my attention against the aggressor on behalf of my clients. So it is really fulfilling.
That's incredible. Thank you for doing that work.
Oh,
It's so necessary and so needed.
thank you. Thank you.
Do you have colleagues that are in this field, like around the country? So if, let's say, somebody came to you and said, I'm in Chicago and I really need help, would you be able to point them in that direction?
Yes, there are lawyers that do the work that I do all over the country. Always happy to provide a referral or a resource to the person that calls. And we do that every day, right? We get hundreds of calls. And if we can't help them, we definitely point them in the right direction.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you have a book coming out in September.
I know. So yeah, that comes out September 12th. It's going to be on sale on Amazon, and it's called Fired Up: Fueling Triumph from Trauma. And I really wanted to share my story because I wanted me to give my story out so other women can share their stories. Because I've seen it firsthand how powerful that is. When women stand up for themselves and come forward, other women want to come forward. And we saw that through the Me Too movement, right? One woman came out and then there was just a plethora of women that came forward. And so I wanted to write my book for that same reason.
That's incredible. And in that you share your journey.
Yeah, I share my story as to what happened as well. So I tell my story in a very raw and vulnerable way. And I provide a resource to help women who have been abused, either at work or at home, from feeling helpless and hopeless like I did, to feeling empowered and in control. I could talk about my healing journey, and I provide you or the reader with steps and tools that they can take to start on their healing journey. But I do believe the step one, the first thing you got to do is you got to say something. You got to talk about it. You got to acknowledge it. We really want to shove it down and pretend like it didn't happen. And if I just ignore it, it'll go away. I can just move forward in my life because it was back then and I don't want to address it anymore. But the more we do that, the more consequences it has for us, the more it will hurt us. And it's, to me, by doing that, you're just giving the abuser more than what they've already taken from you.
Do you mind if I ask, and please just tell me if this is an inappropriate question, but do you have a relationship with your father now?
So my father passed in 2010, so no, but prior to him passing, yes, I did have a relationship with my dad. And it was just like that. It's like you ignored everything he did. And my therapist, after going through therapy for many years, that's called Stockholm Syndrome, where my therapist thinks all my anger should be directed at him. That's where it should go. But it's not. It's directed at other people, and my rage comes out in other places. I wanted to get away from him so bad when I was a kid. I got away, moved to college, and yeah, he was still in my life until he passed.
So when you get in those moments of rage, did she give you any like decompression exercises to do?
No, what I have done is I've identified it. So before, when I would get into these moments of rage, they were misdirected. You could set me off because you said something. For example, I'll give you a perfect example. My dad used to tell me to shut up in a not such nice way, all growing up. And he wanted me to keep my mouth shut. He didn't want me to say anything. And if I said something that he didn't agree with or he didn't like, he would threaten to kill me. And that, as I've gotten older, when people tell me to chill out or calm down or be quiet, I would go off. Like I've pushed people from it. It would enrage me. And I didn't get that. I didn't understand that when I was young and I hadn't started my healing journey and hadn't gone to therapy. I just thought they were pissing me off. Don't tell me to be quiet. I'm going to say what I want to say. But what I've learned through therapy is that was a trigger. That was me going back to that little kid who was being told to shut up. And when I was a kid and was told to shut up, I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. And I was angry, and I didn't bring out the anger as a kid. And what I've learned is, again, to identify what happened and to know that's a trigger. And that's helped me. It's helped me the tool is to figure out where that's coming from. The rage isn't coming from you telling me to be quiet. The rage is coming from a different place. And so identifying, feeling whatever I'm feeling, the rage I'm feeling, but then figuring out like, where is that coming from, and going back and doing some work. So I've done some inner child work through the process, taking me back to how I was feeling as a kid when the abuse was happening, and really feeling the emotions that I suppressed and repressed as a kid growing up.
That's awesome. So that's a really cool process. Just even being self-aware enough to identify that's where it came from, and now I can just chill out.
Exactly.
That's a great tool. You don't necessarily need to do anything like breathing exercises, as long as you can identify it and know how to move yourself out of it. That's a really strong technique.
Yeah, and it takes time, right? Just to even be conscious of that, right? Because the first, like I said, for many years of my life, I just wanted to ignore it. I've moved on, I've gone to college. Like, why am I focusing on these things that happened to me when I was a kid? I should just get over it and move on. But there's a lot of consequences. I can't just put it aside. I need to feel the feelings that I felt as a kid that I just pushed down. And my body couldn't fight with that anymore.
So what advice would you have for survivors who might have gone through what you went through to help them heal and move forward?
I would say the first step is to acknowledge it, and acknowledge it. It's not, it happened to you, but acknowledge it to yourself, put it down, tell someone. And if you can't tell someone, write it down, start journaling it, make it real, as opposed to something that's in your head that, you're on a loop on. So acknowledge it, share it with someone. And if you're not ready to share it with someone, write it down on paper. That would be, to me, like step one. Like you have to do that, because until you identify what happened to you, it's just eating you up alive. You're just like shoving it down, and that's going to continue to have problems, cause you problems that you're experiencing.
And I know the answer to this question, but I want to hear from you. Like, what's the benefit of taking your abuser to court, of hiring a lawyer to handle this?
It's incredibly empowering. And like, you don't feel that way when you step in. When you first step into my office, you're like me. You are depressed, you're anxious, nothing seems to be going right. You are ashamed as to what happened. You're blaming yourself. You're trying to figure out what you did to get yourself in this situation. It wasn't right. Now a lawyer tells you, you're right, that is not right. And when you stand up for yourself, you're letting that person know what you did was wrong, and I'm not letting you get away with it. You're not letting them get away with it. And then at the end, you feel empowered, like you can stand up for yourself that you didn't have when you first stepped in. So I just think there's a lot of empowerment from taking a person to court. It's not easy. I'm not saying that it's an easy process. It wasn't easy what you went through either, right? And so this is part of how you're going to get yourself better and not let this person get away with it.
What's a good way for a survivor to prepare themselves for the court process? Because it takes so long and it's such an emotional journey. What could somebody do to prepare?
A good support system, like really having a good support system. So having a law firm and lawyers that support you and that you feel comfortable with. Like I said, we have a survivor advocate that's helping you through that emotional toll that litigation takes. A therapist is always helpful. It really is, like having somebody to support you through the process, not only of what you went through, but also what you're continuing to go through, because you are having to talk about it again, right? Even if you want to move on with your life, it's not closed yet while you're in the litigation process. Friends, people that are supporting you, who believe you, who aren't questioning why you're doing it. You don't want to be surrounding yourself with people criticizing your efforts to come forward. You want to be surrounding yourself with people that will support you and are happy and excited for you to be on this journey to stand up for yourself. So awesome. Get a good group of people around you and a good support system. Yeah.
A good, solid support system. I love it. So now tell us where we can get your book on September 12th.
On Amazon.
Tell us the title one more time.
It's called Fired Up, Fueling Triumph from Trauma. I believe when you start sharing your story, you can also find your triumph. So I hope when people read the book, they can see that.
I'm excited to get my copy. I haven't gotten it yet, but it'll be in the mail today. Yes. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to say that I didn't ask about?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered a lot. The only other thing when we're talking about lawsuits and coming forward, I think sometimes you think women are losing, like we're losing in the court of law, we're losing these battles. And I'm here to tell you, every day women are winning. When they stand up for themselves, they are winning. We're this idea that we shouldn't come forward, we shouldn't be ashamed of ourselves for standing up for ourselves. And that's not true. That's just what your abuser wants you to think. And so by doing that, you're just turning the paradigm and flipping it. So
I love that. So that was, I feel like, a really good interview with Arlene Haeggquist. She was very poignant and very direct in her responses. And I think that, I don't know if you got this, Sammy, but I think that she has so much heart and passion for it. I think you could just tell by like her words and her body language, like she's really in it. What do you think?
Absolutely. I felt a connection to her through a couple of things, which, excuse me, like I highlighted, and I'm sure we're going to touch upon them shortly. But something that I really valued and pulled from her was the support system. I know, like, I went through a previous issue. It wasn't the exact same situation, but if I didn't have my support system, I just wouldn't be in the same spot I am today. That was the biggest thing I pulled, plus another million things here.
Yeah, I took a lot of notes from that interview, and I did the interview, and I'm still, every time I watch it, I'm like relearning. But yeah, I think support systems are so important, right? Having that level of support and empathy really gets you through, right? So like, even when I was going through my stuff, which was similar to hers, mine was a boyfriend in college, and then another boyfriend in college, and then another boyfriend in college. And having my friends there to help me through it, whether they knew what I was going through or not, was very validating, right? It made me feel seen. I feel like if I didn't have my friends and my family, I don't know if I would have gotten through it. There were definitely points in time, various points in time where I was suicidal, where I was like in a really dark, depressed place, where like getting out of bed became a huge feat for me. Yeah, I love that she highlighted that and suggested that was incredibly important. What else? Go ahead.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Something else that I highlighted was, I never knew this, is that she works with, I'm looking at my notes really quick, she works with a team of 15. That's amazing. And every single person on that team is there to support one individual. I actually never knew that at all. And that just makes, for me, that's just more empowering to know that all of these people are coming together and care. All these people took these jobs because they care. And the fact that like these support systems are out there, these teams are out there, it's just wonderful to know that and to be able to send people to groups like this.
Yeah, having a whole team behind you has to feel super empowering, right? Especially, I love that they have a not lawyer, what did she call it? A survivor advocate who's not a lawyer, who's there specifically to help the survivor. That's so smart, right? So you have this team of 15 professionals, all trauma informed, being led by an advocate who's teaching them as a person who went through it themselves to be trauma informed. I just think that if everybody had an opportunity like that, or everyone had a team like that, these lawsuits would be so much easier for survivors, because right now it takes an average of 4 years from filing the complaint to actually getting to trial. So over those 4 years, any opportunity or any advancement in your healing gets set back over and over again, because you have to relive it over and over again. And if you're not convincing to a jury, if you're not like the perfect victim, right, sobbing and broken and crying, it's harder to convince people who have no idea what this feels like, that you are legit, and that all the media around all the women who come forward are lying and all that bullshit. It's hard to convince those people. So you do have to remain stuck in time. And having a team of 15, like you pointed out,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really liked how she took her own experience and became exactly what she needed. I think a lot of people in this industry do, right? What we're missing when we're going through it, or what we feel like we need, we grow up to be, right? And I have a lot of colleagues who have had that experience where, a friend of mine, Maureen, I feel like I'm doing all the talking and I apologize. But I have a friend, Maureen, who grew up in a very abusive household, just like Maureen. And what she wanted And she grew up just envisioning a living room with a bunch of mothers who she could just run in and hug them and lay on a couch or a rocking chair and just be held, because her mom didn't provide that for her and her house was very toxic and abusive. So now she literally goes around the state of New Jersey and creates these like living room settings in police stations, in crisis centers, in whoever will host it. And she designs those so that people who are feeling that, like what she felt or experiencing what she felt or what she did, have a living room with comfortable chairs and mothers who will just hold them. It's beautiful to be able to take that experience that was so painful and traumatic and be able to transform it into a career.
Absolutely. And just that, the power of a hug. Like the power of a hug is so important to the human system. It's important to everybody. Every single person deserves a hug. Something as simple as that. And now that your friend was able to make that into a whole community and be able to provide that all around, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something else that I like that Arlene was talking about, I wanted to pick out with, and this is something that really bothers me because it is so truthful, is when she got into the power, the money, the influencers. When she stuck out, like those are the individuals who think, yep, I can get away with everything. And we see that everywhere. We see that plastered everywhere. And unfortunately, there's certain places that I've worked like in my previous jobs, current jobs, what have you. We see that currently. Just because that they have the money in their accounts or they have the followers that they have, they think they can get away with the world. That is one of my biggest pet peeves and something I shut down immediately when I see it.
Yeah, no, honestly, it is in every industry. You're 100% right. I don't know a woman who has not had a male boss who has used that money or that power or that dynamic to control them. And I know that we talked about this in the opening and shared some personal experiences with this, but to make it political, look at our government right now and everything that's happening there. If a single other person came out and openly said, you just grab women by the pussy, wouldn't that have become a bigger issue? Like they have the potential to be in prison or in jail or convicted on that. And because of money, power, and influence, that person is currently in the most powerful position in our country. Yes. And that's sick. But disgusting. It's disgusting. And he grew up with money and he grew up with influence and he grew up with power because of his situation. And that with CEOs all the time, even like the Coldplay concert guy, right? The CEO of, I don't remember. I keep wanting to say Anthropology. That's not Anthropology. It was some other company. He exercised his power and he's not going to get in trouble. He resigned. He didn't get fired. He resigned because he was embarrassed.
Yes.
And probably by the instruction of his divorce attorney so that his wife can't take everything from him. The money, the power, and the influence, especially in like workplace dynamics, is a huge problem.
And going off of that, specifically the power hunger and the power spot, something that Arlene brought up and it really stuck out to me is that some of these women, they are working their jobs paycheck to support themselves, to support their families. And now they have this horrible thing happening to them and they feel like there's nothing they can do. Nothing they can do. Who do they go to? Who advocates for them? It's heartbreaking. Her specific words were that women are harassed by bosses. It can be really scary because of the control, and they can control your pay. They can control your complete income. That is absolutely terrifying. I have been very lucky not to have that in my life, but I couldn't even imagine having the stress of my job, and then you have the stress of your supervisor harassing you constantly and have nowhere to go. It's just mind-boggling.
The power dynamic is such a problem, right? Because a lot of people, I don't know the statistics here, but like most people in the United States currently are living paycheck to paycheck. They depend on that income to feed themselves and their families. Me too. And so if you have a boss who is harassing you, who is abusing you, who is propositioning you, anything like that, you have a choice to make: feed my family or deal with it. And that's not really that's not a fair choice. But especially with the job market right now, how it is, and like everyone complaining that no one wants to work, but how impossible it is to find a job. Like it's such a, how do I put, a shitty position to be in. I have to choose between my safety and feeding my children or feeding myself and having a roof over my head. I think things have changed and shifted since the Me Too movement in 2017, but not fast enough to my liking.
Yes.
All of these people, regardless of position, money, influence, or power, should be held accountable for their actions. Everyone needs to be held accountable. If you're, to put it blankly, if you're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit, and you don't deserve to be in the position that you're in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going off of that, like, what if we jumped into advocacy really quick? Arlene really put, like, something that I learned from her is like, she didn't have that growing up. And how is it that there's a good portion of humans out there that they don't have the advocacy growing up and stuff, and they turn their lives in such a negative way, to where Arlene was able to go through this horrible event, not have an advocate for her at all, went through a deep depression, went through suicidal thoughts. She wanted to take her own life because nobody was there for her. She didn't have anybody. But then she had the strength to be able to turn that and become the advocate for others, educated herself to make sure that this doesn't happen to others. That is just something extremely empowering and something that I look up to every single day.
I absolutely agree with you. Taking that trauma and turning it into triumph, which is the title of her book, Fired Up.
Yep.
Triumph from trauma. I think that's such an empowering and strong position. Being an advocate, especially if it's something you've gone through, there's nothing more fulfilling than that. And I give her and the probably millions of other people who've done something similar, taken their trauma and turned it into their power or turned it into their career, their mission. I think that's such a beautiful and strong, wonderful thing to do, right? It just creates a more empathetic and empowered, strong community. I can't get past empowered and strong. I need to find better words.
Oh, those are perfect words.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I loved, and I use this a lot. So when she was talking about documenting everything, right? So even going back to, if you're in that position where you have to choose between feeding your family and standing up for yourself, the documentation aspect I thought was such an important key component, because if you decide that you want to move forward and have a lawsuit or go through those proceedings, documenting everything starting now. I tell that to everyone. Ever since this interview, I've been like gung-ho, you're having a problem, document it. Create your own. So something that I suggest is creating an email specific for that person, like to complain about them, and sending emails to that email from wherever, whichever email, doesn't matter, because it's time-stamped, it's dated, and you just put in the body of the email any text messages, the scenario, who was there, as much detail as you can, and then it's all in one place. So if you do go to court over it, or if you do need to escalate the complaint up to a higher up or a C-level or HR or whatever, you have everything in one place. I thought that was so brilliant, and I love that.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And the other thing that a lot of individuals don't know, so let's just say they knew about documentation, but they didn't think about, oh my goodness, timestamps, right? Something that I would love for individuals to know, because I've learned about this recently and in the past. If you are documenting on, I prefer the email way. I just want to make that very specific. But let's say you start in an Excel sheet or a Google Doc and you start documenting. The beautiful thing about technology this day is everything has a history tab, and it takes you back to a date and a specific time it was recorded. That is something that I've had to use documentation at some point. I didn't have the time and date stamps, but thankfully I have a very smart good friend who is, hey, don't forget that you can look back at these as well. And I was like, oh my goodness. And we pulled all the timestamps. So it took a little bit more work, so the email would be perfect, but documentation is always there. Don't ever feel, as long as it's written down on some kind of technology as well, or even if it's in a journal, but if it's written down, there's always a timestamp on everything.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter which way you do it. If a Google Doc works for you, or I tell even people to do like a notepad on their phone, do something, just have it somewhere, save the text messages, save everything you can, put it in one place so that you can access it when you need it. I actually had to do this when I worked for the military because I had a coworker who was sexually harassing me and stalking me through my phone. It was crazy. And I started screenshotting all of the text messages. I started time stamping and dating and writing little blurbs about what happened on each day and like any interactions I had with him. And it was so much easier than when I did escalate it to the commander of the base. I had everything in one place. I had 77 text messages. I had like over 100 emails to myself. I had all of these things. And I didn't know to do that. That was just like, I need to write this down so that I can clear it out of my head. And it really worked. Unfortunately, the outcome of the scenario didn't work out for me, but it ended up like the person got counseled, and had that system not been broken at that time, it would have benefited me way more. I wish there was like a happier ending to that story, but having the documentation made me so much more credible. So instead of me going and bumbling and fumbling, I had everything prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, documentation saved me from a harassment charge, which anyone who knows me, I don't harass anybody. That is something I've never done in my life, but it was with an ex where he was texting me nonstop. Like, obviously we all thought it was good and butterflies in the beginning. Oh yeah, happiness. And then fast forward like to the end of it, he was actually still with his ex-girlfriend who was before me, long story kind of thing. Never actually broke up with them, but we thought they were. He was, pardon me for saying this, but I don't care, very stupid, dumb as shit, because he thought that he could delete his text on his phone thinking that nothing would be there, whereas on my phone everything was still there, every single piece. So that was my documentation. So when the cops show up and say, hey, what's going on, I'd be like, oh, here you go. And it was just the complete opposite. I was like, it was the opposite. Like, it was, the harassment was on the other end of it, to the point where I actually moved. I didn't technically move, but I went down to the Outer Banks with one of my good friends for 3 months just to get away, just so like the kid would just stop showing up and stop texting. But it was all because of that documentation that it saved me from them trying to lie and flip it on me.
That's crazy. I'm really glad that you had that, and that technology doesn't delete from both ends. How stupid.
I didn't say I dated the smartest people in the past.
So it goes both ways, right? So for anyone listening, if you are with someone or someone who might try and get you for harassment, who might be harassing you and using that as like deflection or trying to manipulate a situation, having that documentation for you could protect you as well. So it works at both ends, right? Either the being harassed to escalate it, or the protecting yourself from being accused of harassment. And I do want to clarify that only 2 to 8% of reports are false reports. It does not happen often, and the 2 to 8% depends on the demographic. So really and realistically, 92 to 98% of disclosures and reports are true reports. And I don't want to discredit anyone who comes forward, but in the off chance you've been accused, like I was accused of verbal and emotional abuse and financial exploitation of an elderly person, which was totally false. I've never emotionally abused anybody in my life, but she was upset with a contract that she signed for publishing and tried to get a lawsuit on me. And so I had everything documented. I had all of our meetings recorded. I had everything I needed all set aside in one folder on my computer. And as soon as that lawyer letter came through, I sent all of that, and they dismissed it immediately because everything she said was bullshit. And so it protects you on both ends. But yeah, I think we covered a lot. Like, honestly, Arlene's interview was incredible, and she's such a strong advocate. And I 100% recommend anyone who is in this scenario or feels like they just want that extra level of support, or even just to understand if you want to be an advocate or someone who went through something like this. Fired Up is an amazing book. There's a chapter in it I really loved. Where is it? It's called The Body Remembers. And it reminded me a lot of the book, The Body Keeps the Score. If you have not read this book and you've experienced any sort of sexual abuse, or physical abuse. I recommend it, but know that it's very scientific. And so it can be a little triggering. Fired Up, it gives you a lot of the same content in that one chapter, and it's more trauma informed. So 2 great book recommendations from me. Is there anything else you want to say about the interview?
No. The only thing that I think, which would be a great wrap up for us, to be honest, and I waited for this, is it's like a bit of a quote that she said, that Arlene told us. She said that you were being the person that you needed growing up. So through that, like, you were being the person that you needed, you were being that strong person. And I think that resonated with me through so much, because through all thick and thin, all the good and the bad, I was always proud of myself for being that person that I needed, whether mostly good, but sometimes you need that a little bit. And it's just going off with that, I adopted my own phrase, which someone could probably say it's stole from somewhere, but I've always gone off with every negative, there's always a positive. And I know that's what gets me to thrive. And throughout this series with the healing with emotional abuse and talking with Marissa here, I know that's a phrase you'll hear from me a lot, because it's something that it's my mantra. It's something I thrive off of.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And Arlene's information is all in the description of the show notes, or like the description of the episode. So feel free to reach out to her with any questions. And then if you'd like to connect with us, any personal questions, relationship advice, you want to share a story, you can email us at healingfromemotionalabusepod, POD, @gmail.com. It's a little long, a little wordy, but hey, it's the nature of this beast. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week.